Okay, Groovy Sattvas, I got my matcha latte from this new Japanese place down the street. This Japanese place down the street feels authentically Japanese. And for some reason, it's making me really homesick to go there. It was a very bizarre experience. I walked in there today after getting yelled at by some Austrian guy who was putting in bike racks on the street, and I went to put my bike there, and he starts shouting at me. And that old Los Angeles trigger happened, right? In Vienna, you're gonna get yelled at by people, but they kind of laugh about it, and they're like, hey, you made a mistake, you fucking moron! That's the attitude, but if you brought that spirit to an interaction with a stranger in Los Angeles, where I used to live, there's gonna be gunfire, there's going to be fists pumping. So anyways, I still have that Los Angeles energy. So I couldn't lock up my bike rack. I go to a different place to lock up my bike rack. I'm all kind of pissed off. And then I look up and there's this brand new Japanese place. And I'm like, I need this because I wanted a matcha because I don't do coffee anymore, as you know. So now I get over-caffeinated, as you can see, on matcha.
Outside Frankfurt, outside Munich and Frankfurt, in Germany. Okay, it was...
Listen, that's not the point. The point is I have my matcha, and I want to do a video today about unpacking and sharing a little bit what my experience was helping to lead a retreat at a monastery or an ex-monastery / practice space, practice center, retreat center outside of Munich, outside of Frankfurt, outside of Munich and Frankfurt, in Germany. Okay, it was Brad Warner's Sit Down and Shut Up retreat. So I had the blessing, the privilege of filling in for him because he's dealing with some stuff that he needs to be in America for. So here I am. It was a really interesting experience. I want to unpack that and share it with you before I head off in a few days to England, to Hebden Bridge, to fill in at a retreat there that Brad will not be able to attend or lead. So interesting experience helping to lead a retreat again. It's been a long time since I've done that, and a lot's changed since the last retreat I led. So let's get into it. I just watched a clip of what I just said to you all, and it was really boring. I just watched the clip of the what I just said, and it was really boring. There's a lot of that. I wonder how much you guys skip around. Maybe I'll just get straight to the point. The most interesting thing for me about this retreat were what they call Dokusan. Now, if there are people in my former community watching this, they're going to freak out because they're attached to koan practice, and they think it's some I don't know, like Merlin giving you the magic book or something, and only Merlin can give you the magic book of koans. But Dokusan in this community simply means a private interaction. Student, the retreat leader, and one of the retreat participants, they meet and they talk a little bit about practice. That's it. And it was really interesting to sit down with virtual strangers. I mean, I had to meet people and get their name and shake their hand when they came into the Dokusan room because I hadn't actually met 3/4 of these people that I was meeting with. So what that means is, like, I'm sitting in this space that has selected for people who also find Zen practice to be so important. It's probably, for most of these people, one of the most important aspects of their life. Probably. I mean, even if they don't necessarily know it or wouldn't express it that way, it's the glue, it's the linchpin, it's the cornerstone. It's important enough to them that they've taken time out of their lives to come and sit and stare at a wall with some stranger with a shaved head for 5 days. So what happens is people come into this Dokusan room and they're supposed to have a question, and they always did have a question, but the question in a sense is just kind of a pretext to get the two of us to interact. And a lot of the interactions are very interesting. Hearing how people meditate and how they weave meditation and Zen into their family lives and their job lives, and how they're searching for meaning or purpose or just a full experience of life. A life not where they're not crushed by suffering or problems, but a life where they can, in some sense, flourish or at least live. And the interesting thing about all this is people always come with the same problems. Like, I get to sit there in this wonderfully privileged position and have people come in and out presenting the same kinds of problems, the same kinds of questions. I mean, there's like 5 or 6 questions that everybody asks, right? And I'm not going to get into them here, but it's like a category that 5 or 6 categories, maybe even fewer, wherein you can fit every single question that a person asks. And what you learn is that everybody has more or less the same kinds of concerns. And so as the retreat leader in the Dokusan experience, I begin to learn what Zen practice is about through these students of Zen. I begin to learn what their concerns are. I begin to learn how they're addressing those concerns on the cushion. I begin to learn what some of the problems are that they have in their practice and with the Zen practice, and then in their lives. And an interesting thing happened at this retreat. As I began to get these questions, both in Dokusan and then after the Dharma talks. So I would give a Dharma talk and then I would ask for questions. And it's always a little bit awkward because, you know, when you give a talk at a retreat, it's very different than this. It's more serious. It's within a very particular context. I'm going to post these talks that I gave here on YouTube at some point. But they're not going to make much sense. They're not going to be that interesting because a Dharma talk at a retreat is really speaking to the people in the room and from the energy of the retreat. So it never makes any sense when you extract the talk from that setting. But nonetheless, I will do so. And at the end of these talks, I would ask for questions, and people would give me questions. I mean, one guy was wondering, is there a Zen way to do intellectual work? So in Zen, we talk about chopping wood and carrying water, right? Zen is very physical. And at a monastery, samu is the word we use for work, getting stuff done, like during the day when we have work time. And what it means is work practice. And the question this guy asked me was essentially like, is there a way to do work practice with intellectual labor? My basic answer to him was, the principles and the practice doesn't change depending on the work. Like, there's not a different Zen way to do an email than there is a Zen way to chop carrots. And I think that answer is correct, but it bothered me. I even couldn't sleep that night when I was thinking about this question. And I came back the next day and I said, you know what? Ignore my answer from yesterday. This is now an open question. This retreat has produced this open question. And what I began to realize is that a retreat is like a forest, like after a rainfall. And the open questions are like mushrooms that just start popping up. And there is a pressure if you're helping to lead a retreat, and if you're giving Dharma talks and you're wearing robes and you got a rucksu on, like there's an impulse to try and have answers. And this is one thing I realized during this retreat. Impulses are complicated, okay? I mean, we could say that it's a good thing that I want to have answers, that it's coming from a good place. I want to help people. But I have to be honest, whenever I hear someone say, I just want to help people, I have immediate suspicions. I don't trust that impulse necessarily because it's an impulse and there are lots of things woven in that. There's lots of strands of ego woven into any impulse, especially the impulse to help. So I want to help, but I also want to be a good monk. I also want to be a good teacher. I also want people to speak highly of me behind my back. Like there's all this ego involved. And a lot of my work in this retreat was, dude, you got out of the Zen teacher's game because you didn't like the teacher game. The game of one person standing at the head of the room, proffering insights. I didn't like the googly eyes that people make at the authority figure at retreats. I didn't like how people bend their wills and their personalities towards the will and personality of the teacher. And I just didn't like what it did to me and to people I know and like. It makes them stiff, it makes them boring, you're always having to do the role. Being a teacher is a flipping role. And true, some people can do the role and some people fake it, and some people can't do it at all, right? But it's still a role, and that's like really, really, really important. It's a role. And so what I did not want to do at this retreat was let all my energy go into leading the retreat, because that's false. You have to be on your edge at a retreat, and you have to be practicing with people. And that means making yourself like vulnerable to your stupidity and your ignorance and your failings, and then not hiding that. So my point is that the next day at this retreat, I said, hey, we have an open question. Like, this retreat has produced an open question, which is, can you do intellectual labor? Like, I talked a lot about writing, because I'm a writer, and I talked about writing during this. Can you do intellectual labor the same way you do physical labor in a Zen way? I didn't like the answer I had given him, so I said, this is now an open question. And we began to surface a few open questions at this retreat. People have the question of, someone said something to the effect of, Zen is a heart-to-heart transmission. It's from heart to heart, outside of scripture, beyond words. So why are there so many rules in Zen? And I have an answer to that. I can give an answer. But it became another one of these open questions at the retreat. And I really liked how the body of practitioners was producing these open questions, and in the space of our practice, we're kind of holding them together. These are questions that people have again and again and again in Zen practice. They're questions that I have about and in my Zen practice. Another person brought up the problem of approval seeking in spirituality. And this person kind of had a humorous scenario where he was saying, like, I sit on this cushion and I'm like trying to please somebody, some idea of a teacher or a Zen master in my head. I talked about this in a video recently. It's like we're auditioning for God when we sit on our cushions. Like, God, are you Buddha? Are you watching? God, are you watching? Aren't I good? Aren't I good? Aren't I good? We're got this hall of reflecting mirrors in there where we're sitting, we're practicing and watching ourselves, and practicing and judging ourselves, practicing and watching ourselves, practicing and judging ourselves. Whose approval are we seeking? And why? This is another open question from this retreat. So this was a retreat in the Soto lineage. The difference between Rinzai and Soto is really, it's not that big in the West. It's American Zen and Western Zen, German Zen. They're all their own things. It's almost like you can't even compare them to what goes on in Japan, where we got specifically these lineages from. Brad got his lineage from Nishijima Roshi. I got my lineage from Sasaki Roshi. But here's the deal. What was I saying? I was talking about questions, open questions. Oh, the difference between Soto and Rinzai. So in the Rinzai lineage, there are differences. Like, the Rinzai lineage can be direct, it can be confrontational, is typically known as the samurai lineage. The Soto lineage seems to be more chill. It seems to be more like gentle and relaxed. Not that it's not firm, tough, strong, and disciplined, but it's a little bit more chill, than Rinzai. In Soto, you face the wall. In Rinzai, you face the room. Everybody's got kind of feeling each other's presence a little bit as you stare down at the floor. So different energies. But the biggest practical difference is you do not do necessarily, in some cases you do, but mostly you do not do a consistent koan training program or practice program with your teacher. So there were no koans, obviously, at this retreat. And so I worked in the koan lineage. And what I really liked were these open questions that they're not koans, but they're just I don't know. They're just interesting objects on our shared practice horizon, right? And I think it felt good to unearth these questions and then just to leave them. Acknowledge that we have these questions about Zen practice. We all have this question of, why am I doing this practice? A lot of people had that question, like, I hate Zen. Why am I here? I hate this. I don't feel like it's working. I don't know if it's working. I don't know when it's working. I don't know what the standards are. I don't know what the boundaries are on this weird just sitting thing. Like, everybody feels that a little bit. Like, at one point I said, in this retreat, I said, the boxer Mike Tyson has this saying that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And day 2 or 3 of a retreat like this is getting the punch in the face. Like, you have your plan going into the retreat. You're going to sit this way. You have certain insights. You got it all figured out. You know what you're going to do. And on day 2, after you've been at the retreat for 24 hours, it's the punch in the face. All that goes out the window. You don't know what you're doing anymore. Your body hurts. Your mind is angry, and it's pissed at the people next to you, and it's pissed at the retreat leaders, and it's really pissed at you for being pissed because this isn't going according to plan. So the mind goes crazy. And everybody's having this experience together. But when we unearth those questions together and we air them, give them some space and leave them open, it had at least for me, it had an interesting effect on my experience of this retreat. It felt like, in a sense, we were all working on these questions and problems, or holding them together, one body of practitioners. A couple other things, man, then I'll let you go. I know you got a lot to do. Sorry to delay you here. Sorry to keep you. Hey, everybody has a personality, and whatever that personality is, that's how you're going to sit. That's why I think many of us don't like Zazen so much. I mean, because we're doing nothing the way we do everything, our own way. And this can wind up being painful because you do nothing in your own way and you get on your own nerves. And the fact that you get on your own nerves is humiliating and degrading. And then you start chasing your own tail on the cushion. And somebody mentioned to me that they felt like they were purifying their karma. And, that's a very technical term in Buddhism. Probably, it sounds technical. I was never taught about purifying my karma. Nonetheless, that's sometimes what it feels like at a retreat. It feels like you're getting the junk out. And you're flushing all that sort of ego sludge out of your system. All the raw sewage of jealousy, resentment, envy, pride, frustration, despair, fear. You just, like, it's coming up. You're a plumber, man. You're a sewage dude, and you're cleaning out the pipes, is what it feels like sometimes in a retreat. And a common sentiment among many but not all, which is interesting, is that it's hard to come here and do this. I think for a lot of people have beginner's luck with Zazen. They come to retreat, they haven't been really doing much Zazen in their life, and they have this thing on their calendar, and it's in between things on their calendar, and they come and they do it, and it's like, why don't I have more problems? I had somebody say that to me. It's like, I feel like I should feel worse. He said, what's wrong with me? I feel pretty good this retreat. There's a lot of problems in the world. I have problems in my own life. Why am I not worrying more? That was his biggest problem at this retreat, was, why am I not worrying more? This gentleman seemed to be like a generally upbeat and optimistic, positive person, but occasionally that experience arises too, where you breeze through a retreat. But a lot of people struggle to sit down and shut up. It can be very weird and very awkward to spend that much time with your thoughts and with other people in silence, and to just sit and hold your posture. Hey, this is interesting. Remember I told you about that open question about intellectual work, and is there a way to do thinking in a Zen way. I mean, because my teacher flat out said, not my teacher, my mentor in Zen Buddhism, many years ago, flat out said to me, whenever you're thinking you're wrong, okay, so how do you do intellectual labor the right way if thinking is always wrong in Zen? Well, we had an interesting moment in this retreat where the person raised the question, how do I do intellectual labor in a Zen way? And I said, hey, great, that's an open question now at this retreat. And then later on, they came up with an answer to this question. And they said, posture. And within the context of the retreat, I was like, yes, okay. And how cool is that? Like, the question was raised by the Zen student, and by the end of the retreat, the Zen student had an answer, and it was an answer that resonated with all of us. And posture was something that I talked about a lot during this retreat, because life is hard, and it's complicated and complex. And one thing Zen practice teaches me is make it simple, stupid. And posture is very simple, and usually posture answers a lot of my questions, like hold yourself upright and face the task at hand. In this case, staring at the floor when you're doing Zazen, or staring at the wall when you're doing Zazen. Not getting caught up in your head, but bringing your head back to the activity at hand, the moment that you're living in, which is a sacred moment. I talked a little bit in this retreat about the whole story of the Buddha, and about how the Buddha's story is a story of losing your stories. Buddha's born, and the prophet says to the Buddha's father, your son is either going to be a great religious leader or a great leader in the world. And the father says, no, I want him to be a world leader. So he raises the Buddha to be a world leader, gives him money, sex, power, everything you could ask for to be a man of the world. But the Buddha leaves that life, and he says, I'm going to follow the other story that was prophesied at my birth. I am going to be a great spiritual teacher. He goes into the forest and he does these torturous spiritual practices, like he's starving himself, torturing his body to try and carve himself into a great sadhu, a great spiritual leader. And this dude is smart, and he's aware, and he's humble, and he's true to the call in his heart. You gotta be true to that call in your heart, because that call will shatter your stories. And that's the hardest thing in this life, is when our stories get shattered. And now we have nothing holding us together. And that's what happens to the Buddha. He realizes, I'm not making myself into a great spiritual teacher. I'm making myself into a egoic jerk who's starving. Because his pride is so strong, he wants to be a great spiritual teacher. And then he realizes, if I keep on at it like this, I'm going to kill myself. Like, I'm just going to die from starvation. And so he lost his spiritual story. So now he has no story whatsoever. And what does he do? He goes and he has dinner. He has a bowl of rice milk. I was laughing at this retreat. I was like, apocryphally, the story goes like a cow was milked, and then that milk was fed to another cow, and then that cow's milk was fed to another cow, and then that cow's milk was fed to another cow, and then finally that perfect bowl of milk, rice milk, was fed to the Buddha. And I thought that all that lineage of cows drinking cow's milk, it's very incestuous. Like, it's like the Habsburg of milk cow situation. I don't know why that was considered to be the right way to consume dairy in ancient India. But anyways, the Buddha sat there. He had dinner. And as he ate his dinner, the rice milk killed his ego. It happened naturally. He didn't have to work at it. It was just doing a simple thing. He ate food. He brought it to his mouth. He needed it. He needed something from the world. There was a need inside of him. The body was like, hey, nature, God. The God of the body was like, we are growing, we are living, feed us. And the outside world said, we got something for you. And he brought it in, and he ate it, and the food became part of his body, and he forgot himself as he was eating it. And his ego died with each mouthful. And it was, I can imagine the gratitude he felt and the connection he felt and the utterly humanness, being fully and truly human, right? And the Buddha probably saw a hallucination of himself in that moment when he used to be practicing so hard, beating himself up to become a religious prophet. And he probably thought, that's not what this is about. I was born into a human form, and my job is to be fully human. And that's the middle way. It's between extreme worldliness and extreme spirituality, right here in the middle. So at this retreat, one of the themes was like doing the simple things of your life completely without being trapped or lost in your head, without doing the things that we sometimes do, at least I know I do in the world, like kind of feeding doggy treats to my bulldog ego, keeping the thing strong and healthy and vibrant and vital. Feeding my delusions, pouring gasoline on the bonfire of my delusions, and living in such a way that reinforces the fundamentally delusive idea that I am separate from my world, that I'm like separate from it. Like Zen is a practice within the lineage of Buddhism that teaches us something that is very different. We're not fundamentally separate. We give rise to the world, and the world gives rise to us. If this, then that, I'm rambling. I apologize. If you'd like to support this project called Zen Confidential, you can go here to patreon.com/Shozan Jack Hobner. You can also go into the video description section below. There's a link to PayPal. I'm deeply grateful for all the support that people give. Deeply, deeply, deeply grateful. And this was a really good retreat. Brad Warner is who he is. And my sense with him, you can feel a person's presence at a retreat where a community, an ad hoc community has been cultivated based on the character of the person who started the retreats. And my sense, right or wrong, I don't know. I mean, Brad Warner is a friend of mine, but I've actually never practiced with him before, I don't think. And my sense being at this retreat with people that have practiced with him is that Brad is who he is. Like what you see is what you get. And a lot of people find that really trustworthy and really helpful. They know they're not being BS'd. They know he's speaking from his experience, what he's learned and what he's gone through, and he's not gonna sugarcoat it or tweak his Dharma talks to get more donations or subtly or not so subtly slip into the role of salesperson for Zen practice, which is oftentimes what happens at a retreat when you're the retreat leader, is you find yourself in the role of having to sell the practice to people. But Brad isn't going to do that. And I think some of my feeling at this retreat of trying to practice myself and not be the retreat leader, but to be a fellow practitioner came from this spirit at the retreat that I think was put there by Brad. So I'm really grateful. I don't want to say good and bad and better and worse, but these are better Zen students than many I've practiced before, and they were good people. And that's not always the case. A lot of times you get, a lot of people come to Zen and they're very troubled and they bring you their troubles and they make problems. Honestly, that's been my experience a lot in Zen practice. Not entirely, but that has been my experience. And I got the sense that these were serious adults who have their own practice. They're like Brad, they're individual, they're not institution people. They're not company men, They have their own practice and they bring that energy and that strength of a home practice to this community of people working together. And so I really appreciated being able to do this. I'm still processing the whole retreat, but it was quite a blessing. And we got to actually video in conference with Brad at one point. It was really cool. I'll leave you with something he said. He said, I don't want to misquote him, but he said something to the effect of like, that Dogen says when you sit, you're not just sitting there by yourself. You're not even just sitting with the people in the room. You're sitting with the whole universe. You're sitting with the whole universe. Apparently Dogen said this or something like this, and Brad was quoting it to us. And Brad said, I believe that, right? I think that's true. He said, I can't prove it, but I think that that's true. And he kind of left us with that. And it really put my personal Zazen struggles into perspective this week. And it reminded me that I am not going to solve my problems myself. I am part of the whole universe. And the universe's problems and the universe's questions and the universe's answers are also mine, and vice versa. Don't limit yourself to this little provincial shell of self, dudes. I'm gonna finish my latte. I got a lot of stuff to do. I gotta pack. I gotta email Ryan Air. I gotta email the folks at Hebden Bridge. I gotta do a ton of laundry. Pile of clothing in my room from this retreat smells like a 14-year-old boy's gym locker. I got stuff to do. So I'll catch you bloody sattvas on the flip side.